Hi, my name is Brandon Enright, and today I'm going to perform an experiment to see if I can dye polyamide 2200, otherwise known as Shapeways White Strong and Flexible, not using heat, but instead using a strong acid. So the way this is going to work is I have 32% hydrochloric acid, which is pretty concentrated hydrochloric acid, and I have three different dyes. I have RIT dye, I have Dylon number 8, which is a nylon dye, and I have a Jacquard acid dye, which is also a dye meant for nylon. And the basic hypothesis here is that a really strong acid will be able to attack the pieces and soften them up and get them ready for the chemical reaction that will actually dye them, and I won't have to use my pressure cooker or a bunch of heat. I have no idea whether or not this is going to work. I did experiment putting a piece in 98% sulfuric acid, and even after 12 hours the piece wasn't dissolved, it just got pretty soft and rubbery. And so I thought that was pretty encouraging. So the way this experiment is going to work is I'm going to use as little acid and as little dye as possible, and I'm going to use 50% water acid concentration. So this is 32% hydrochloric acid, and if I use 50% acid and 50% water, it should be about 16%. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill each one of these with 50 milliliters of hydrochloric acid and then 50 milliliters of water to get them up to 100 milliliters. And then I'm going to put 5 milliliters of each one of the dyes. So Dylon's going to go in this one, Jacquard is going to go in this one, RIT dye is going to go in this one. And I have 2 additional beakers here, one just pure hydrochloric acid for the just ease of moving acid around, and one that's going to be pure water. And then I'm going to have just 2 test beakers, one with 32% hydrochloric acid, so I'm just going to fill it up to 100 milliliters of hydrochloric acid, and another one at 16, and I just want to see, without any dye, I just want to see how the parts fare in just the acid, at the 2 different concentrations. And for the pieces I'm going to try to dye, in each one of these beakers I have 2 different pieces. I have a pretty fresh from the printer, I've had it for a couple of years, more than a year, but it hasn't been touched, hasn't been polished. I took it out of the bag today. Fresh from the printer piece, and then I have a corner to a PA Penultimate that I have very thoroughly polished. And so this will be relatively easy to dye in my pressure cooker or just on my stovetop, but this will be very hard to dye because it's already been polished. And so I want to see how each one fares in each one of the different beakers. So to get started, I need to measure out some acid, and it's going to be a long, let me talk actually about safety precautions before anything else. So I'm going to be wearing my safety glasses, and because this is only hydrochloric acid, I don't think I'm going to have to deal with any fumes or anything like that. But in case I do, I'll turn on my overhead ventilation, I'll turn on my air filters, and I'll use an organic vapor respirator. So I'm going to use my glasses. I'm going to use, these are nitrile gloves, and I have a giant bucket of water. Oh boy! Oh! I have a giant bucket of water already filled up in case I need to plunge a arm or a head or anything like that in it, or pour on an acid spill. Hopefully that doesn't happen. And I have a box of baking soda with the lid already cut off of it, just in case I need to neutralize some acid. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show filling up one of these conicals with 5 milliliters of dye, and one of these beakers with 50 milliliters of acid, and then I'll repeat that process off camera so that I don't make this video 2 hours long. So, glove on. Already took off my watch and Fitbit for this. I don't think that either one of them would do very well with hydrochloric acid. Alrighty. Safety glasses. Alrighty. Okay, let's do first the Dylon. And okay, I'm short of the 50 milliliter line, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a small amount of acid in my, and then I'm going to use my syringe labeled with the A. This is the one that's going to be for acid, this one's going to be the one for water. And I'm going to bring up about 5 milliliters of acid and try to top this one off. Okay, needs a little bit more. Okay, perfect. Right at the 50 milliliter line. Okay, that's very, very strong on the nose. Probably going to start sneezing. Okay. Now I'm going to do 5 milliliters of Jacquard in one of my conicals. I don't actually know how to do this all that well. I don't quite know how to scoop. I don't think that I have anything to scoop. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the cap from another one of my conicals just sort of as a scoop, which is kind of a terrible way to do it, but that's what I'm going to do. Let's do this more in front of the camera over here. This is really clumpy. Well, I got a little bit more than 5 milliliters. I'm at more like 7.5. Just about 5.5 now. Okay, that's at 5 milliliters. And since Jacquard is over here, I'm going to put it over here. So then this one will be Dylon, and then this one will be Rit. Okay, I'm going to repeat that process off camera 2 more times for the dye, and however many more times for the acid that I need to. And then I will turn the camera back on and show the mixing and all of that. So back in 20 minutes or so. Okay, that didn't take 20 minutes, it only took about 10. I have 50 milliliters of acid in the Jacquard, the Dylon, the Rit, and the 16%, and I have 100 milliliters in the 32%. Although it's kind of just a waste of acid, I don't really need that much because it's all the same concentration whether I have 50 milliliters or 100 milliliters. And I have over here, I have Jacquard, Dylon, Rit in the same order as my beakers and the same order as the dye back here. Now what I need to do is I need to get 50 milliliters of water into these 4 beakers to bring their concentrations to roughly 16% acid. And then I have a pH test kit, which I will test one for. So, I am going to fill up my beaker here to 50 milliliters. Okay, I want over, so I'm going to draw some water out. Still over. Looks like a little bit of dye powder. A tiny amount of dye powder got into it. No big deal. Alrighty, this is 50 milliliters of H2O, and I'm going to add it to the jacquard. Okay. We do the exact same thing again. And it's kind of hard with my sink to not just go way over. Oh, this is just too far over. Perfect. Let's go in the Dylon. Okay, I think I did a lot better that time. Oh yeah, it's actually a tiny bit short. Oh man, it went way over. Okay, add this to the rate. Okay, and then I have one more to do at the 16%. And it's a little short. Ah, perfect. Alrighty. Now, I really don't know basically anything about chemistry, so all I know is that the pH is going to be really, really, really low, but I don't know how low. And I'm actually not even sure that these test strips are accurate enough. I've never tested a test strip before, but I have enough test strips to last me a lifetime. And that was like 1,000 test strips or something. Okay. And, oh, you know what I need to do? I need to stir. Alrighty, test strip in the 16% here. And well, the color is not quite as saturated on the strip, but it is somewhere between, I think it's somewhere ever so slightly above 1. It's like maybe 1.1 or something like that. That's just my color guess. It doesn't get, I guess, much more accurate than that, but it's somewhere really close to 1. I'm going to test the 32% also, just to see if it looks lower. I would expect that it does, but I think this thing is starting to get pretty saturated at around, so low. So my guess is maybe we won't even be able to see any difference at all. know, there's ever so slightly less yellow in it, but it's not as dark as the 0. So I put it at like maybe 0.8. So, yeah. Okay. So very, very, very acidic. Don't know what else to say about that. It's very acidic. Okay. So I have the Jacquard, the Dial, and the Rit. So let me add the dye. This is a Jacquard. The Jacquard was the clumpiest of the dyes and the hardest one to do. But it all came out. Okay, this is the Dial. Okay. And the Rit was the easiest. It was the grainiest and best flowing. Oh, it flowed out and mixed around well too. Okay. Now, I am going to use a glass stir rod that I'm going to rinse off first. Okay. And the Jacquard here. Some of the dye's floating on the surface still. Okay. I'm going to rinse off my stir rod. Really should be using purified water for this, but I couldn't go to the store today for all sorts of reasons. This is not even, like, there's tons of dye on the surface. It's not dissolving all that well. It's frothy. It's possible that this is a really, really concentrated dye, that's what I've heard about Dylon anyways. So that maybe 5 milliliters of Dylon is way more dye than 5 milliliters of the other two. I think Rit has a lot of grains of salt in it, which is probably why it floats so well. But it also looks the least black of any of these. And, like, I can sort of see through the water with the Rit, but I can't do that with the Jacquard. The Dylon looks by far the blackest, and then the Jacquard looks second blackest, and then the Rit just looks like an ugly dark brown red. Okay, so I have these three. I'm going to move this beaker to the back here. I have the 32% and the 16%. Yeah. Swap their positions there. Okay, and this is the moment of truth. Maybe I break and destroy the pieces, I don't know. Huh. There's a big visual difference between them. Let me see if I can get my camera to show that. So there's the Rit, and it just sort of looks like wine. And then there's the Dylon, and it looks way blacker. And then there's the Jacquard, and it sort of looks somewhere in the middle. And then obviously the 32 and the 16 look uneventful. Okay. So, I don't know how long to leave them. And I actually didn't even plan for a way to get them out, although I know I have a pair of tweezers around here somewhere. But it's, according to this clock, 9:57. So I guess I'll give them 5 minutes. So I'll wait until this is 10:02, and then I'll pull each one out, take a look, and then put them back in. Until then, I'm going to turn off my camera. Okay, it's 10:03, close enough, and I've set up my camera closer, and I didn't find tweezers, but I did find forceps. So I'm going to start with the Jacquard die over here. And that seems to be taking a little bit of dye, not much. Actually, you know what? Let me do this. It needs a white backdrop. Let's see if this works. Gets a white backdrop, and it's just taking a little bit of dye, not much. And then the PA2200 Ultimate corner basically looks unchanged to me. Okay, on to the Dylon. And the pieces are turning a really interesting, like, I don't know, berry pink. And PA2200 Ultimate corner is mostly unchanged with a tiny pink. Okay, and then the RIT, pretty much a dirty white. And then the PA2200 Ultimate corner, it looks unchanged to me. Okay. Let me rinse my forceps. The 32% here, I mean, obviously I can't see any change. The part doesn't look like it's dissolving to me. It doesn't, it feels hard to the forceps. I don't notice any difference. I assume the same is going to be for the 16%. So, uninteresting. Okay. Well, it's now 10:05, and I think what I should do, since they haven't blown up and caught fire or dissolved or anything like that, I think what I should do is leave them for an hour and come back at around 11:05 and see what, if anything, has changed. Alrighty, it's been almost an hour, and as far as I can tell, not much progress has been made. So I'm going to get on my gloves, which I should have had on before I started the video. The RIT dye looks pathetic compared to the Dylon and the Jacquard. It looks so thin and watery. I don't know if that's because of the acid, or if RIT dye just really is thin and watery compared to these other dyes. So there's the RIT, and the water looks pretty clear. There's the Dylon. There's the Jacquard. So, I seriously doubt that if these pieces haven't died in an hour, it doesn't really matter how long I wait. So what I'm going to do, that's just water, and I'm going to pull pieces out. So this is the Jacquard. And the piece didn't really die. It got slightly darker. and the tumbled piece doesn't really have any visible change. Okay, the dialon looks pretty promising actually. Oh, wow, that all washed off. So, after washing off, it's just a ever so slight red tint. Getting this corner. There we go. And the corner has basically no visible change. Okay, here's the RIT. Turnpiece is a kind of a strange gray yellow. That's actually the biggest effect of any of them. Weird. And this piece also has some slight graying. Nothing spectacular. Okay, this is the 16% acid. And the only real test I can do here is not a visual one, but the part seems just as solid as it always has. So the acid probably attacks the nylon very slowly. Yeah, this feels just as strong and hard as ever. Okay, now the 32%. Oh, and they were sticking together, so that's a sign that maybe it's softened up a little bit. Oh yeah, it's slightly flexible now, and feels pretty hard. Slightly flexible. And I think, as I mentioned before, when I put a piece in 98% pure sulfuric acid overnight, it got really soft and flexible, like gummy. And this one, yeah, it's more flexible, but just barely. The surface still feels hard, but it's clearly more flexible. Like, I can feel it bend and give. So I think that answers that. The most dramatic darkening effect was actually the RIT dye, barely, and then the dialon turned it sort of this interesting light pink, and the jacquard sort of is halfway between the dialon and the RIT in terms of, it's a slight pink and it's slightly darker, but really like nothing spectacular. Certainly not a useful result. So I think that answers that. You can't dye polyamide 2200, which is actually, I believe, just nylon 12 or polyamide 12. You can't dye in an acid with any of these dyes, at least hydrochloric acid. I'm kind of curious if you can dye it with sulfuric acid at a high concentration, but that wouldn't be a viable process. Sulfuric acid is just too dangerous to handle. I don't even know what I would put it in. I couldn't put it in a metal container. Like, I could put it in glass, but the sulfuric acid is so dense. Just getting a piece weighed down in it would be hard. Like, sulfuric acid is almost double the density of water, so the parts would float. Like half of them would be sticking out. And then I have no idea what would happen if I put the dyes in sulfuric acid. It probably wouldn't be pretty. So I don't think that strong acids are the answer here, unfortunately. It's kind of sad, disappointing results, but hey, those are the results as they are. So yeah, at least now I know. Okay, well, thanks for watching.